When the groom walked away, the hidden Mafia boss revealed his heart. "She's my future." Tommy Giordano stood outside the church, the air thick with anticipation. He could hear laughter and music flowing from the inside, but his heart felt as heavy as the tools hanging from his belt. Today was supposed to be a celebration for his cousin, but all Tommy could think about was the woman in white at the altar, Mia, his childhood love, about to marry someone else, Joseph, the golden boy. It felt like a knife twisting in his gut. The memories of stolen glances and late-night talks flooded him, turning to ashes as he watched a future slip away. Inside, the murmurs of the crowd escalated into chaos. Joseph had vanished minutes before the ceremony, leaving the already buzzing guests in a frenzy. Anxiety gripped Tommy. Here he was, barely scraping by as a mechanic, the weight of supporting his sister on his shoulders. Now he had to see Mia marry a man renowned for his family's reputation, a reputation Tommy loathed yet respected for its power. The societal pressure weighed on him, threatening to suffocate what little hope he harbored for a life of his own. Before he could process the gravity of the situation, he noticed Tony, the heart Russo, stepping out of the shadows. The local mechanic and feared Mafia boss, Tony was both a childhood nightmare and a flicker of hope. Tommy had seen him as a whispered legend on the streets, but today, amid the disarray, he was in control. Why was he here? The wild emotions churning in Tommy's chest flared as he felt the ground shift under him. "Everyone calm down." Tony's commanding voice cut through the chaos like a blade. It was surreal and confusing. Tommy had never paid much attention to the softer side of Tony, but he could see it emerging now, like an unexpected storm. For a fleeting moment, they locked eyes in a space that seemed to hang in time. Tommy felt the weight of unspoken words. "She's my future," Tony confessed, his voice steadier than Tommy's heart. It struck Tommy like a bullet. This was the man Mia was marrying, divulging his feelings like an intimate secret in the midst of turmoil. Tommy's mind raced. Did Mia understand the depth of what Tony claimed? The implications twisted in his gut. Torn between loyalty to his family, the struggle to provide for his sister, and rekindled desires for Mia, Tommy grappled with burgeoning resentment. Before the whirlwind thoughts could settle, a voice broke through his train of thought. "Tommy." His sister's worried face pierced the moment. Worry sank into him, the promise of a better life twisting into something darker. What the hell would he do if Joseph was gone for good? Would Mia's happiness cling to another reality, one he was helpless to grasp? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The wedding was a crumbling facade, and Tommy was stuck in its machinery. The air thickened with the sweat of impossibility. Would he confront Tony? Could he even risk it, standing against the ramifications of his every choice? As he watched Tony navigate the crowd with unexpected grace, a flicker of uncomfortable admiration ignited within him. There, standing at the intersection of family loyalty and desire, Tommy felt time collapse into a single, agonizing moment of decision. The path before him was fraught with shadows, all leading to a question that ignited a storm. Could he overcome this web of legacy to choose his heart and fight for Mia? Tommy's mind struggled against itself as he weighed the storm of decisions ahead. It was as if the world had narrowed down to a single point of pressure, a pinhead bearing the weight of his entire existence. He could either fold beneath it or burst forth with the force of 1,000 unsaid words. He hadn't asked for this. He was a mechanic accustomed to grease-stained hands and routine, a far cry from noble sacrifice or passionate confrontations. "Mia needs to know the truth," he whispered to himself, a resolute flame igniting in his chest. She was standing at the altar, swathed in white, yet another casualty in the power plays orchestrated by men like Joseph and Tony. Tommy slammed his fist against his thigh, forcing the urgency to guide him forward. The crowd's excitement roared like distant thunder, oblivious to his turmoil. He caught sight of Mia again, catching her breath, excitement written in every line of her face. But as the light hit her just right, Tommy could see the worry flicker through her eyes. It struck him that her happiness was a mask barely holding against frustrations he couldn't voice. Did she feel the looming weight of family expectations too? Resentment bubbled within him. He took a step toward the entrance, but a wall of bodies blocked him. The realization that barriers came in all forms, both physical and emotional, hit him hard. What was stopping him from moving forward? Fear clawed at his insides, fear of rejection, fear of being labeled another player in this dangerous game. If he confronted Tony, he wouldn't just risk being outcast, he would endanger everything he carved his life into. Yet if he didn't speak, if he allowed this moment to slip, part of him would die alongside unexpressed feelings. It was a perpetual struggle, a manifestation of the very duality that kept him tethered to mechanic work while yearning for more a life where dreams thrived. Searching his mind for clarity, Tommy considered his sister, whose face was still etched with concern in his thoughts, a reminder of familial duty. Would she suffer if he took this chance? The minutes slipped by, and Tommy's frustration mounted as Tony emerged, framed against the chaos, a figure of control amidst disarray. The moment they locked eyes again, it felt charged, two worlds colliding. Was this how it felt to be seen versus merely observing? The unyielding facade Tony carried felt impenetrable, yet the moment revealed a hidden vulnerability amid a consideration Tommy hadn't seen before. "You know it's not just about her," Tommy shouted, his voice catching some guests off guard. Confrontation was never in his playbook, but desperation twisted his arm. "This isn't just about you and your future." Tony looked taken aback, momentarily thrown off balance. "What do you know about my future?" he retorted, but the mask began to crack. The speed of the conversation shifted as an unscripted intensity filled the space between them. Tommy saw the glimmer of a man who cared beneath the callous armor. It presented an intriguing possibility. "More than you think," Tommy countered, feeling adrenaline surge through him. Every heartbeat echoed the weight of a revelation. It wasn't simply about claiming Mia. It felt bigger, an opportunity to redefine his life, to step out from under the suffocating expectations that shadowed him and his family. Thoughts raced as Tommy considered the implications. Maybe she deserves a chance to choose, too, he pressed, sounding braver than he felt. The truth loomed, and the air electrified with the unspoken, the tension between duty and desire, loyalty and love. In that charged silence, the distant sounds of the wedding swelled like a tide about to break. This was a pivotal moment, not just for Mia, but for Tommy to reshape his own place in the world. Would he seize it? Would he defy expectations, break from the chains holding him back? The depths of his heart cried out, stirring an unstoppable force within him to fight with every ounce of courage he could summon. As time stretched painfully, the sharp ring of fate pulsed in his ears. The moment had arrived, but would he be ready to face the truth and all its consequences? Tommy's heart raced, each beat a countdown to his next move. He stood at the precipice of a decision that transcended the immediate chaos surrounding him. The fabric of his existence twisted and turned, as he fought against the gnawing doubt that clawed at his resolve. This was his moment, a solitary flash of clarity amidst the tumult. A moment that could redefine everything, the path he had always followed, and the man he wished to become. He grew weary of playing the role of the bystander, the silent observer in the life of his beloved sister. Mia's mask of excitement offered a stark contrast to the vulnerability he recognized in her eyes. This wasn't merely about love, it was about choice, autonomy, and the ability to shape a life that resonated with true desires rather than imposed expectations. "I'm not backing down," he murmured fiercely, the pressure of the crowd morphing into courage. He broke through the barrier of bodies, the world blurring as it fell away, reducing everything to a sharp focus on Tony. With every step he took, Tommy could feel the weight of judgment hovering around him, but the fury channeling through him was unmistakable. This was not a mere gamble for Mia's love, this was about unearthing the dormant strength he held within. He was not just a mechanic, he could be a voice of reason amidst the clamor, a testament to taking a stand against the tide. "Why don't you let her speak for herself?" Tommy shouted again, determination imbuing his words with power. The gathered guests shifted, uncertainty rippling through the crowd like an echo. Some leaned closer, intrigued, others frowned, disapproving of his intervention. Tony's brow furrowed, the initial confidence slipping as he absorbed the challenge. Tommy seized that moment, ensuring the spotlight held steady on him and the truth he wielded. The anticipation in the air charged him. He realized he could provoke change, inspire a recalibration of what was deemed acceptable. I may not know your life, Tony, but I understand the struggle of carrying everyone else's expectations on your back. This is not just your wedding, it's Mia's life. Let her choose. Tommy breathed, the fervor in his voice rising, untamed and raw. A moment of uncertainty flickered behind Tony's eyes, the crack in his armor more pronounced now. For the first time, Tommy noticed the boy behind the man, revealing a fracture in the facade. Was this the vulnerability that lay hidden beneath layers of power and control? Mia remained quiet, her gaze flitting between the two men. Each second felt like an eternity. He could sense the internal conflict, her heart torn between the life she was expected to lead and the desires pulsing within. Yet calling her name felt incomplete, like stepping on a tightrope stretched thin between two worlds. Tommy, she finally whispered, her voice quaking. Did she want him to step back, or was this the encouragement she needed? With every heartbeat, Tommy recognized the dangerous dance unplayed, a chance to elevate not just his sister, but himself. Maybe this confrontation was not simply for Mia's future, it was about unearthing the man he longed to become. Realization struck him like lightning. It wasn't about fighting Tony, but confronting the parts of himself that had always acquiesced, that accepted the role of the unassuming brother. Could he transcend that definition? Could he embrace the unknown that awaited him if he chose to stand firm? Stop letting someone else dictate your happiness, he said, his eyes locking onto Mia's with unwavering sincerity. This is your life. It's time for all of us to choose for ourselves. As the silence fell again, the tension grew palpable, every held breath woven into an invisible thread tightening around their collective fate. What would Mia say? What would Tony do? Just then, Tommy realized that the moment he fought to define was nestling in each of their hearts, a transformative force waiting to be unleashed. The air pulsated with unvoiced possibilities, and for a split second, it felt like the world paused, leaving everything suspended around them. Would courage ripple through their lives, transforming their paths forever, or would old expectations bind them once more? As the silence deepened, Tommy's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with an electrifying belief in his own resolve. He had shattered the glassy surface of expectation. The reverberation of his voice seemed to resonate through the crowd, tugging at the very threads of choice that bound Mia. She stood there, caught between the safety of familiarity and the shimmering potential of her own happiness. Underneath the swirling uncertainty, Tommy felt a shift, not just in Mia, but in himself as well. This pivotal moment was less a battle with Tony and more a confrontation with all that he had silently accepted within himself. Tommy's mind raced as he pieced together the new identity that was emerging. He was no longer just a younger brother, concerned only with watching over Mia. He was becoming an advocate for authenticity. The years spent in the shadows of others needed to end. Mia's eyes met his, glistening with unshed tears that mirrored the tumult of emotions swirling around them. There was fear, yes, but there was also a glimmer of hope. Tommy, she breathed again, and he saw in her gaze the questions swirling rapidly. Could she step into the light set before her? Could she trust him to guide her out of this morass of expectation? Take a breath, Mia, he urged softly, hoping to ground her, to remind her of the strength he believed she possessed. You don't have to make this choice alone. You have a voice, use it. In that instant, Mia seemed to see him, really see him, not just the brother but the man willing to push against everything in the hopes of unlocking her dreams. It was a frightening admission, one that spoke loudly of their tangled history, yet it filled Tommy with a fierce pride. Here was the heart of his development. It wasn't merely about breaking free, it was about building something new. But in the depth of their connection, he felt the burgeoning pressure of judgment coalesce from the crowd. What would they think if Mia did step forward? Would they even let her? The stakes loomed larger than the space between them. His curiosity turned acute. How often had he silenced his own ambitions because of perceived judgment? How many dreams had he forfeited under the weight of expectation? The moment felt like a flash of insight. His apprehension broadened into a deeper realization of what it meant to pursue one's own path. He could not demand that Mia choose her own life without doing the same for himself. If he was willing to stand up for her, he must also confront his own fear of failure and inadequacy. Mia, he continued, voice steady but urgent, if you're feeling trapped, you need to find your strength not for me or anyone else, but for yourself. This is yours to claim. Her expression shifted, a playful determination flickered in her eyes, an ember of realization igniting something deep within her. The air felt charged, their surroundings faded, leaving only the two of them and the choices before them. Together, she whispered, her voice almost lost to the crowd but for Tommy's heightened awareness of every nuance. This was their catalyzing moment, a shared acknowledgement of their deeper potential, their intertwined journeys. And yet, just as the wave of hope surged between them, the atmosphere darkened with approaching consequences. Tony, visibly shaken but recovering, scrutinized Tommy with an intensity that bridged vulnerability and threat. What gives you the right to speak for her? He challenged, and Tommy felt ripped from his reverie, his focus shifting to the serious tension in the air. Tommy straightened, the confrontation was no longer just psychological but definitively real. Boundaries of courage were about to be crossed, and he felt a blend of trepidation and exhilaration swell within him. I'm giving her back her voice, he declared, leaning forward. And I'm asking her to take control of her fate. The crowd's attention pivoted, creating an electrifying spiral of intrigue and fear. What would Mia decide? What blowback would emerge from this confrontation? As he faced Tony directly, the sense of urgency intensified. Their intertwined fates were tethered to this moment, propelling Tommy toward not just personal revolution, but a reckoning with latent adversities ahead. The question loomed: was he resolute enough to stand firm if it meant confronting everything he had ever known? The chaos hadn't subsided, it was only just beginning. Would he be prepared to embrace the man he was becoming? With that question reverberating in his mind, Tommy felt the horizon unfold beneath them, a path of choices laid bare. And here, in the thickening tension, he realized the greatest battle awaited them all, the one only Tommy could lead them through or risk losing sight of their collective potential forever. Tommy's heart thudded in his chest, adrenaline coursing through him as he stood before the crowd, the tension palpable. He could feel the weight of 100 eyes, the judgment, the expectations swirling like a storm. Tony's challenge had forced him into an uncharted territory, a line he had crossed, marking the definitive end of silence in both his and Mia's life. He pressed his palms together, channeling all the energy swirling within into a single point of resolve. Mia's life is not a reflection of anyone else's desires. It's her own, and I am here to support that. You can argue, manipulate, and intimidate all you want, but her happiness is worth far more than your control. Mia's gaze flickered to Tony, uncertainty flitting across her features. Tommy could sense her internal battle, could almost hear the clashing thoughts. Would she join him in this fight, or would she retreat into the safety of the expected path? The urgency of the moment wasn't just about Mia, it was about him, too. He realized confronting Tony was a reflection of his challenge to the very fears that had long kept him seated in shadow. You think this is about power, don't you? Tony's voice cut through the air, an icy sneer on his lips. You think making noise here will shift anything? Tommy felt a surge of frustration rise within him at the dismissal. He couldn't let it simmer. It's about her voice being heard. It's about our voices. We've allowed your definition of success to repress all of us for too long. The expression on Tony's face shifted, a flicker of acknowledgement breaking through. The silence that followed felt charged, building beyond individual confrontation into a broader reflection of the collective struggles they had both borne. Mia, the choice is yours, he murmured, his eyes pleading. The question that had become so clear, the idea of liberation, was now imprinted on his heart. Did he have the courage to leap off the edge, too? To reshape his destiny alongside hers? In that moment, he recognized his own authentic power. He wasn't merely defending Mia's newfound voice, but rediscovering his own. It was more than advocacy, it was declaration. The walls of his own apprehension crumbled just as life breathed into both him and Mia. Mia's expression transformed, determination igniting behind the hesitation. I want to be heard, she whispered, shifting her focus from Tommy to Tony, her voice gaining volume with every word. I want to choose what makes me happy. This is my life, not yours. Those words hung in the air, a high-wire act performed by both siblings. Their individual journeys intertwined, creating a new path illuminated by courage and hope. Then, Tony's anger morphed what had been a protective facade now twisted into something darker, threatening. You think this is a game? Think again, he spat, teeth clenched. Tommy's resolve deepened, heart racing not just with fear, but with a thrilling sense of possibility. This confrontation was not merely about Tony, it was about dismantling the weight of unearned expectations. If he was going to stand up for Mia, he had to stand up for himself too. You may think you control the strings, Tommy replied boldly, but it turns out we've been holding the scissors all along. The momentary quiet gave way to confusion, and in that stillness, Tommy felt the thrill of defiance. The only route toward growth lay in the collective capacity they both held for change. But he also sensed a quiet looming threat in Tony's presence, one that might shatter the fragile line of their emergence. The air thickened again, tension spiraling closer, boundaries about to be redefined beyond this moment of verbal escape. How far would Tony go to reassert his power? Would Tommy's revelations ignite a spark of rebellion in others, or merely provoke wrath? Mia turned slightly, looking back at Tommy, and the confirmation in her eyes served as a powerful reminder. She was ready to step into her own light. But there was still so much more to unravel. This battle was merely the beginning of something greater than either of them had anticipated. In that charged silence, Tommy felt a familiar edge of fear lend strength to his conviction. It wasn't just about fighting for Mia's happiness anymore, it was about reclaiming his own future, alongside hers. What lay ahead was an uncharted battlefield, and a question loomed larger than any before. When the storm broke, would they emerge partners in their fight, or would they unwittingly retreat back into the shadows? The next challenge loomed, drawing closer. Who would win in this skirmish of power, control, and the right to choose one's destiny? Tommy's breath was shallow, the air thick with tension. He could feel the sting of Tony's disdain, lightening the atmosphere with a palpable hostility. Unsure of how far this confrontation might escalate, he looked around for signs of support, but found only uncertainty reflected back from the crowd. Each face seemed frozen, caught between the defiance displayed and the ominous threat emanating from Tony. As the silence pulsed, Mia's determination began to crystallize into something more potent, something that bridged them beyond individual desires. It was a shared understanding, a flickering flame igniting their mutual fight. But amidst that flame, doubt still lingered like a storm cloud above. Would this moment solidify their bond or fracture under the weight of Tony's impending reaction? Think carefully, Tommy, Tony warned, the undertone of menace curling around his words. You might think your voice matters now, but remember what I'm capable of. The veiled threat didn't just disturb Tommy, it forced him to confront the reality of his own limitations for the first time. What did it mean to stand against someone like Tony? For years, he had let fear sculpt his decisions, retreating to the sidelines while watching others dictate the narrative. But now, as his heart raced, a flicker of awareness ignited within. This wasn't just a fight for Mia's autonomy, it was a fight for his own identity. Mia stepped closer to him, her presence sending a wave of strength through him. If this moment was to define them, then they had to confront their fears, not run from them. You know what you're afraid of, Tony? Tommy countered, unanticipated courage surging within him. You're afraid of losing control of us, taking back the power you've misused. This isn't just your story anymore. For a brief second, Tommy could tell he had struck a chord. Tony's scowl flickered, revealing the faintest crack in his armor. It was fleeting, but enough to reveal the raw nerve of insecurity that lay beneath his authoritative facade. Mia's hand brushed against Tommy's, her fingers intertwining with his. In that small gesture, it felt like they shared more than defiance. They were interlocked in a bond of shared purpose. We will choose our future, Tony, not you, she proclaimed, her voice unwavering. Each word was a brick in the wall they were constructing against the tyranny that had molded their lives thus far. A ripple of reactions surged through the crowd, some roiling in anger, others in reluctant admiration. Tommy pressed forward, reconnecting with this surge of collective frustration. Do you think we'll just accept your violent grasp on our lives? That we'll wither in silence while you dictate who we are? The atmosphere shifted, as though the world around them had been waiting for someone to speak its unspoken truth. Tommy felt growth within himself, the impact of stepping into his own authority as if his beliefs were not just ideas but tools to carve out a new existence. But at the same time, doubt gnawed at him. What if this confrontation only escalated the chaos? Would standing tall lead to retribution that could ruin everything? As feelings of uncertainty threatened to entangle him, Tommy felt Mia's grip tighten, grounding him. Together, they were a force. In that charged moment, Tommy had a profound revelation. He no longer desired simply to exist in Tony's world, he longed to build his own. Each breath he took felt infused with the prospect of liberating not just Mia, but himself. This was about defining who he was, his aspirations, fears, and values. Then came Tony's low, menacing chuckle. You're playing a dangerous game, kid. Are you ready for the consequences? Tommy's heart pounded as he squared his shoulders. Facing Tony was one thing, but standing against the decades of repression meant digging deep into his sense of self he had long buried. The moment was fragile, the storm within Tommy's mind swirling. He was teetering on the edge of a precipice with only the firm conviction of his new path to hold him steady. But would that internal conviction withstand the storm that Tony could unleash? The uncertainty loomed ahead, a vast unknown of fear mixed with hope. As Tommy locked eyes with Mia once again, he knew the bond they were forging would either grant them the wings to soar or the chains that would drag them down. The stakes hadn't been this high before, and the fight was far from over. Would they find the strength to survive this turmoil, or would they falter under the weight of their own aspirations? The crowd held its breath, caught in the tension that hung thick like fog. Tommy felt the eyes of dozens resting on him, and for the first time, he understood the gravity of a choice he had long avoided. It was no longer just about Mia, this was about unveiling his own identity, buried beneath years of passive acceptance. Tony's smirk faded slightly as Tommy's resolves crystallized into determination. Don't think you've won just yet, Tony raised an eyebrow, reclaiming control of the conversation. You still don't know who you're dealing with. But Tommy's fear had begun to transform. It was no longer a shroud but a catalyst for clarity. The stakes were set, the battlefield defined. Tommy's thoughts raced as he conjured every moment of helplessness in his past. The times he had stood idly by, allowing Tony's oppressive rule to dictate the course of their lives. This was a turning point. He reminded himself of the promises he had made, not only to help Mia reclaim her future but also to grasp his own. What would that future look like if he succeeded? In a sudden surge of audacity, he took a step forward, breaking the invisible barrier that still held him in a state of hesitation. No more threats, Tony. You think fear will keep us in line? It hasn't worked, and it won't work now. The authority in his voice startled even him. His hands clenched, fueled by the adrenaline coursing through him. Mia shifted beside him, her presence sparking an undeniable bond that fortified him further. We are going to fight together, she stated. Her voice was firm, a promise wrapped in collective resolve. We deserve a future, our future, free from your shadow. Each word resonated, echoing in Tommy's soul as the realization struck him with blinding clarity. He was no longer looking for permission to exist. The crowd finally began to murmur with burgeoning support, emboldened by this shared moment of defiance. As their voices began to rise, Tommy felt an unbreakable cohesion forming. Perhaps this wasn't just about him or Mia, perhaps it was the catalyst to awaken everyone else as well. But even as he felt the surge of unity, Tommy knew the battle was about to escalate. Tony's face twisted into a mask of fury. It was a stark reminder that while Tommy was discovering his voice, Tony was not one to relinquish power easily. You will regret this, he growled, the threat lingering ominously in the air. Tommy's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a verbal skirmish anymore, it was a fight for survival. He could feel the explosive tension building. Was he ready for the fallout that would surely follow his decision? Instinctively, he tightened his grip on Mia's hand. This bond they forged would be tested ugly in the wake of Tony's vengeance. "What do you want from us, Tony?" Tommy demanded, attempting to anchor himself in the maelstrom of raw emotion. "You've taken enough, you owe us a reason." The question, sharp and direct, made the atmosphere crackle. It was an invitation for Tony to reveal his true self, albeit through a thin veneer of disgrace. Tony took a moment, gathering his thoughts. But what flashed through Tommy's mind wasn't fear of the inevitable storm but the realization of uncharted potential. If he could navigate this confrontation, he might emerge no matter the scars transformed. As Tommy and Tony locked eyes, the energy shifted. Their conflict was no longer confined to a simple power struggle. It was a conflict of philosophies. Would fear and oppression prevail, or could courage and authenticity rewrite the narrative? With each passing moment, Tommy felt something deep within him stir, a flame of resolve snapping into action. His thoughts were a tempest of strategies and outcomes, weighing the risks against the possible victories. Would this be the moment he finally stepped into the fullness of his identity? As the challenge hung over them, he understood now that regardless of the outcome, walking away into uncertainty might just be the very act of bravery he desperately needed. The question loomed large: could he dismantle the system of control that had trapped them all? The moment of truth beckoned, a silence filled with impending confrontation. Would Tommy's newfound strength survive the intensity of a looming conflict, or would he find himself once again folding under pressure? As he embraced the uncertainty before him, the path toward his evolution unfurled, exhilarating yet daunting, a duality he had to navigate carefully. And as Tony moved, fury palpable on his face, Tommy braced himself for the inevitable clash. The earth beneath him felt like it was shifting, constricting, as he prepared for the storm ahead. Tommy's heart raced as he braced for Tony's retaliation. The tension crackled in the air, charged with unspoken challenges and unyielding defiance. He had voiced his truth, there was no turning back now. The confrontation demanded everything he had: his identity, his integrity, and perhaps most importantly, the alliances he was starting to forge not just with Mia but with everyone thirsty for change. Tony's constricted expression revealed his fury but also the unmasking of something deeper, a vulnerability that surged beneath his bravado. As the crowd leaned in, it became clear that this wasn't just a clash, it was a transformative moment. Could this be part of a greater truth within Tommy, an awakening that reached into the depths of his fears and inextricably linked them to his dreams? "Tommy," Tony thundered, attempting to regain the upper hand. "You see courage, but what you've unleashed is chaos. This isn't some movie finale where the hero wins. This is real life, and I hold all the cards." The taunt attempted to cut through Tommy's resolve, but instead, it fueled the fire. Tommy's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the opportunity. "You may hold the cards, but I have the will to play." Each word served as an anchor for his burgeoning identity. He sensed how his voice resonated through the crowd, establishing a tighter connection forged in shared fears of Tony's reign. As he gazed out into the sea of faces, he saw not just fear but desperation, a mirror reflecting what he once felt. They were waiting. Waiting for someone, anyone, to embody the hope for change. Each moment solidified his resolve, evolving his desire from merely survival to empowerment. Mia's hand in his offered support, a tether in the chaos blurring the lines of what was real and what was fabricated in Tony's mind. "Tommy," she murmured, her eyes searching his, "remember who you are. You're not just doing this for us, you're doing this for yourself." In that instant, as if a light had flickered on, he realized that this was not simply about opposition. This was about defining his own narrative, rewriting the plots imposed on him for so long. Yes, he had been cleanly cut from the fabric of this oppressive environment, but now he was threading himself into a new tapestry, a vivid declaration of existence. "I want freedom," he stated, drawing from an inner well of conviction. "Freedom from fear and manipulation. I refuse to accept your version of control any longer." The challenge echoed, reverberating through the crowd. A handful began to chant in support, realization dawning that Tommy was no longer a passive observer in his life. Tony's expression shifted to a grimace. He sensed the power of Tommy's revolution, the tide beginning to turn against his oppressive inheritance. "You're playing with fire, Tommy. And you might just find yourself in over your head." The threat hung heavy, layered with implications he couldn't ignore. But instead of retreating, Tommy pressed forward. An idea crystallized in his mind, a plan that gave him a sense of direction while simultaneously daring to confront his deepest fears. "Then let it be a fire that cleanses the negativity you've built your empire upon," Tommy declared defiantly. Every nerve in him tingled, reminding him of the stakes. Yet, an odd calm settled over his thoughts, a strange duality embodying courage and clarity. He understood then that being a leader meant navigating this tumultuous path, embracing conflict while staying anchored in his newfound purpose. With the scent of rebellion in the air, Tommy turned to face Tony, his expression steady and unyielding. "You want to scare us into submission?" He laughed, the sound almost foreign yet invigorating. "You've done it for too long. But today, it changes." The resolve settling in his core pushed against the tide of uncertainty. As Tony shifted, forming a calculated retort, Tommy felt an undeniable empowerment surging through him, a force awakened, born of the realization that this battle had become personal. He was ready to confront whatever came next. The ground rumbling beneath them felt alive, heralding the imminent clash that would either bury them or rebuild them anew. As Tommy's inner strength surged, his breath steady, visions of potential began to illuminate the uncertain future before him. The confrontation awaited. What would he uncover in the depths of this chaos? The moment held an infinite weight, and with every heartbeat, he understood, with victory, he could rewrite not only his past but his future. The first blow was imminent. Would Tony lash out, or could Tommy's newfound core withstand whatever storm followed? So many possibilities spun like a cyclone in his mind, each one carrying the weight of fate. What would rise? What would fall? The time for reckoning had arrived. Tommy stood tall, a fusion of adrenaline and clarity coursing through him as he faced Tony. The silence stretched, almost palpable, and in that moment, he felt the collective breath of the onlookers mingling with his own, an electric current running through their shared anticipation. Tony, a coiled spring, emerged with renewed aggression, his bravado now a sharpened blade. "You think you're some kind of hero?" he sneered, eyes darting menacingly. "No one's here to support you. They're only curious to see how badly you'll fall." But Tommy's resolve deepened, fueled by vulnerability he once feared. "Curiosity can become inspiration," he replied, his voice steady but firm. "They're not just spectators, they're witnesses to the shift in power. It's time for us to take back what's ours." As he spoke, a flicker of disbelief crossed Tony's face, a crack in his impenetrable facade. Maybe Tommy's declaration resonated, not just with those present, but within Tony himself. Would the antagonist find himself at a crossroads too? Yet uncertainty loomed. Tommy recalled nights spent hiding from the truth, cloaked in doubt and fear. Those memories urged him forward, a necessary reminder of the stakes. Losing wasn't an option. It would mean slipping back into the shadows he had fought so hard to escape. "Do you think you're the first to challenge me?" Tony's challenge echoed, a warning laced with impatience. The crowd thinned as some began to peel away, losing interest as they sensed the fight growing ritualistic. But from behind, a few rallied behind Tommy, recognizing the potential for something different, a spark that kindled deep courage. "Every threat you've ever made," Tommy shouted back, "transformed more than just your empire. You created a landscape of fear, but I refuse to be a part of it any longer. This is about us claiming our stories." He didn't just want to win a battle, he was determined to take ownership of his life's narrative. Action swirled around thoughts, loud and rhythmic. He needed a plan. Tommy's heart raced as possibilities zipped through his mind, strategies coalescing. What if they channeled their collective frustration, directed at the true source of their oppression? "Tell me," Tommy called out to Tony, "how does it feel to breathe fear instead of freedom? Do you really believe you can crush us into submission?" Look around. For every disparaging remark he made, the crowd began to stir, heads nodding, voices rising in defiance. As the tension escalated, Tommy sensed an opportunity. It was time to turn discomfort into action. Let us show Tony the kind of community we can be. One rooted in strength, defined by our willingness to stand together. Eager minds, inspired spirits. He drew on more than just himself now, he ignited purpose in others. Their whispers strengthened his resolve, a wind at his back. He took a more challenging stance, leaning into the uncertainty as if inviting the impending clash. With Tony as his focus, he raised his voice above the tumult. We have the power to change this narrative. We're going to rewrite it together. The palpable shift sent tremors through the ground. This wasn't merely his battle anymore, it was a collective uprising sparked by his challenge. Each face in the crowd mirrored his own determination, hearts aligning, pounding to the same beat, a chant for liberation. Let us confront the shadows together. Tommy shouted, as he felt the adrenaline swell, the sheer force of possibility swelling within him. The words danced in the air, and he caught eyes with Mia, her fierce spirit igniting additional warmth in his growing confidence. She believed in him. Tony's frustration climbed, calculating this unexpected turn. You think this is enough? He hissed, a serpent threatened. You have no idea what you're provoking. Then let us discover just how deep this fire can burn, Tommy replied, bracing himself, the storm of uncertainty swirling around him but grounded by the clarity of his newfound purpose. What would the tides of confrontation bring? A final push against tyranny approached, and as adrenaline surged, he felt for the first time that his actions could herald the change he envisioned. While victory tasted sweet, failure loomed like an ominous shadow waiting on the horizon. The ground quaked with their emotions. Would they pour their souls into this fight, or would darkness reclaim them? The moment now hung heavy as Tommy prepared for their ultimate clash, fully aware that everything he had built hung in the balance. What would emerge from this collision? Would Tommy finally emerge from the shadows, or would he find the ground beneath him crumble away? Tommy's resolve was palpable, and as he faced Tony, something crystallized within him. No longer just a mechanic navigating life's shadows, he embodied determination, valor, and clarity of purpose. This moment wasn't merely about confronting a rival, it was a defining stand against the invisible chains that had long held him captive. Enough of the threats, Tommy asserted, his voice slicing through the tension. We're done living in fear of your power. Today is about reclaiming our futures, ours, and the many lives you've manipulated for too long. The crowd stood at the precipice of a new narrative, gradually awakening from the slumber of complacency that had allowed Tony's reign to persist unchallenged. Tommy saw reflections of fear and readiness in their eyes. It wasn't just his fight anymore, but a collective resistance brewing, a chance to forge a new identity free from the stifling expectations that had loomed over them. Tony's facade of control began to waver, revealing cracks beneath his hardened exterior. What makes you think this will end differently for you than it has for others? He retorted, but his voice now carried a hint of uncertainty. Because I refuse to accept your definition of what we can be. Tommy shouted back, confidence surging through him like a wildfire. It wasn't just about pushing against Tony, it was about stepping fully into his own light. The memories of his past failures and silences flickered through his mind, but they no longer held power over him. They were additional fuel for his fire. Mia's presence beside him amplified his courage, transforming every word into a building block for a movement, a revolutionary call for authenticity. Together, they represented a union of their struggles, a merging of hopes and dreams. Join us. Tommy called to the crowd, his heart racing as he began to mobilize their energy, turning fear into momentum. We will fight for our right to choose our destinies. This is our chance to break free. The initial gradual responses from the people swelled into unified shouts, echoing back as a vibrant affirmation of their desires, catalyzed by Tommy's lead. We want our lives. We want our truth. Tommy could feel the collective heartbeat thrumming, each voice harmonizing into a powerful crescendo that swept through the space. It ignited the choice he had made to fight, to be seen, embraced, and validated. This was true liberation, emanating from within. Tony's expression morphed into frustration, but amid the chaos, Tommy recognized that his adversary was slowly losing steam. No longer potent from intimidation, Tony faced the realization that change was happening right before his eyes. "You're a fool if you think this shift has any merit," he spat. But Tommy stood taller, more resolute. "You may possess power, Tony, but you will never understand the power of those awakened by their own choices. This is merely the beginning of a revolution, a reclamation of our lives and identities." With every word, Tommy felt chains break away. Each shout of affirmation from the audience served to anchor him further. He was not merely acting out of disbelief, he was consolidating his identity with every breath. A synchronicity emerged, entwining his soul and Mia's into a singular mission, sweeping through their community. Then, the unexpected happened. The hidden undercurrents of admiration and disgust in the crowd began to surface. Those once held captive by Tony's grip became advocates for change, echoing the call for liberation. If they united, they could amplify their voice, shatter the silence that had cloaked their community for years. In what felt like slow motion, Tommy caught sight of those standing by in hesitant solidarity transforming into champions of their cause. Nods of affirmation sprang forth with sparking enthusiasm. "Let us take him down together." One voice cried out, followed by another, build-up of energy coursing through the crowd. What had once seemed impossible morphed into a palpable sense of hope. As he turned back to face Tony one last time, the shift in dynamics was unmistakable. Whatever was about to unfold, Tommy would stand victorious, not just in spirit but through the undeniable strength of the collective asserting their shared truth. Tony threw his head back in disbelief, but it was too late. The tide of change surged around him. The very foundation of his control cracked as Tommy realized the immeasurable power of partnership, both with Mia and the community they all had fought to uplift. When the first chant echoed against the walls, "We are stronger together," a ripple reverberated through the crowd, blending their voices into a powerful current. Tommy's heart swelled with pride. With that, a realization dawned on him: he had already achieved something extraordinary. As an advocate for Mia and himself, he had unearthed something far more powerful. He had redefined the narrative of his life. The ambition once buried in reluctance now surged forth, filled with unwavering clarity. For every breath he took, he savored the sweet victory of standing fortified, not just by his victory but by the meaningful connection that now radiated from within. No longer just a mechanic lost in shadows, Tommy had emerged steadfastly as a leader, embodying courage that knew no bounds. As the chants crescendoed, Tommy took Mia's hand and is a tangible symbol of their intertwined journeys entering a new chapter marked not by constraints, but by triumph and shared dreams. He had not only conquered fear but embraced authenticity, and being defined by himself and the powerful choices he would continue to make moving forward. The storm may have broken, but in its wake stood an unwavering solidarity grounded in mutual respect, dreams, and the unshakable bond they had all found. They had rewritten their story, became architects of their destiny, and prepared to step into a future free from the burdens of yesterday. So as Tommy raised his voice alongside the rest of the crowd, he felt the weight of unfulfilled promise lift from his shoulders, replaced by a profound sense of belonging, purpose, and joy. This was their moment. And then, in the thrall of excitement and renewed ambition, he made a decision. Tommy would make sure each person who felt lost, neglected, or trapped would know they had the power to change their fate. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. He beckoned earnestly to the audience around him, their energy palpable. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your engagement matters in this movement. Comment your reactions and theories about what's ahead, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and awaken their own potential. He recognized that true fans of personal overcoming stories could reshape the narrative together by standing united, affirming their freedom, and amplifying voices that deserve to be heard.